Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. Just wanted to propose another concept in line with our ruminations on post-apocalypse. Been thinking about barter, and the whole idea of trade in the SHTF, in the VROL, the varied rule of law scenario. And I started thinking about private armies and, like Blackwater and shit like that, and how this might be a lucrative service to barter with when shit hits the fan. I mean, you're gonna have fucking motorcycles just love drawing attention to themselves. Anyways, you're gonna have people with skills, and lots of these people are gonna have the tactical skills and the military skills and all that bullshit. And they're gonna either become marauders because they have no other skill sets to subsist off the land. They'll be blowing away deers with fucking grenade launchers or something like that. Or they're going to take the noble, honorable route and offer up their services to trade for goods, namely food. Now, I think in the short term, you're going to see more of a, loot and pillage type mentality with these people. They say it now that, they're all good and this and that, but when it comes down to it, how honorable are these people really? I don't know. It's one person to the next. It differs. You can never make blanket statements about any type of person, but I worry that these people who have these skills, or think they have these skills, or present as if they have these skills, or that they're some kind of expert in these areas, probably it's going to be hard for them not to abuse that. Everybody has a price, everybody has a breaking point, And I think, you might come to find well after the shit has hit the fan, in the case of such a VROL, where there is no full spectrum rule of law, you might find people running rackets, people extorting money from people who cannot, defend themselves, and maybe they could be small-scale farmers, and these meatheads might come in there and say, okay, you give us 25% of your crop, and we'll protect you, and really they just mean, give us 25% of your crop and we won't kill you, kind of like a modern day extortion ring, or whatever you want to call it. But I think there will be the honest trade of goods for private services, as there have been, throughout the ages. That was the whole feudal setup, was, you gave the king a certain amount of your resources that you grew, or he just took it, I guess, through taxation and tyranny. But, he provided you the castle walls in such case that, the raiders or whatever couldn't get you. And I think you might have a similar system erected with lords and, lords, and what are those ones they have in the Japan, shoguns, and Doomsday, the movie Doomsday is it's not the greatest movie, but it's kind of interesting. They go right back to the medieval times. Scotland has been isolated. It's been quarantined because there's this virus on it, and all the people there have erected a new feudal system. Interesting movie. I think also on the same topic of barter and trade, you're going to have like these post-apocalyptic pawn shops which will be enforced, strictly through tyranny or what have you. But you might need some food one day, and you'll bring in some collateral, which you'll get you won't get what it's worth, and then they'll charge you usury or interest on top of that. I'm pretty sure, that always comes into play at some point. Somebody gets a clever idea of how they can make money for nothing, essentially, by putting people into debt. So post-apocalyptic pawn shops, I think that will definitely, that could come to pass, although you would need some varied rule of law. You would need some level of structure or order in order for that to work. You would need some sort of township or community or market system like you had in Jericho, the show Jericho. With respect to silver and gold and precious metals being used as currency, I think in the short term that might be lucrative, for people who have, that stuff stored away. People may, still have some hope for your civilization coming back. And rightly so. In spite of the possible enduring varied rule of law, precious metals may always hold their value in some way, shape, or form, so long as there is resource out there to be had to exchange it for. Otherwise, if people are starving, the last thing anyone gives a shit about is some shiny piece of metal just because it's rare, And in the midterm, I don't think it's going to be that useful, because that's when people are going to be, money and currency is not going to mean a whole hell of a lot unless you have a lot of resources to spare. But then in the long term, again, in the midterm, not so much, but in the long term, if we're talking, many years out into VROL, varied rule of law, then you may start to see, that in, the metal coming back as a means of currency. And I could see silver more so. The problem with gold is, obviously, as many people know, you would need very small denominations in order for it to be, a lucrative method of exchange, simply because, a 1 ounce coin of gold is just not a very useful denomination. Right now its market value is $1,500. Even say it was just $1,000 in the equivalent in goods, how many times do you go and buy that much goods? So it's silver is probably more lucrative. And the problem with silver is that it's hard to always identify whether or not you're getting is entirely real. So I see some problems with that, definitely. But there's lots of it's going to take a while before trade really is able to take off. And but I think that's something for you to think about, is your exchange of services. A farmer might need a mechanic, might need a mechanic more than he needs an excess surplus of food. So services are going to be as vital as goods. And that's why myself personally, I have a education, post-secondary education, but it's not necessarily, it's something which is dependent on a service-based economy, meaning that it's only really valid in a grid-down scenario, which is not to say I couldn't apply it to other things in life generally, but specifically, it's not going to be that useful. Nobody's going to be in need of a counselor. Well, actually, a lot of people will be, but you know, the whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you can't eat, you know, you could care less about self-esteem. So I've been working on looking into various trades that would be useful in an SHTF. You know, medicine is one, mechanics is one, engineering is one, although engineering would require a lot of school. Even computer science to some degree. Some people might think, you know, well, computer science, but, you know, computers, they're not as complex as people think. And we have so much of the bare bones stuff around. There's so much junk that you could very well utilize computers in an SHTF. Obviously, military training is useful. I'm sure there's a lot of other skill sets. Hunting, you know, the ability to hunt, the ability to grow food. You know, of course, I've always advocated a jack of all trades approach. I think preppers are by nature jacks of all trades and Jills of all trades. But, you know, it'd be nice to have some skill that you could offer up in place of stuff, and that's something you could never have stolen from you. You can always carry that with you. That whole saying, you know, knowledge weighs nothing. Bug out bag might weigh 70 pounds, but knowledge weighs nothing. So let me know what you think, and let me know if there are other you know, trades and skills that you think would be beneficial that might not require too much of a learning curve, like, you know, maybe 1 to 2 years of training without doing the whole apprentice journeyman thing, which, you know, can take many years to accomplish also. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching Canadian Prepper out.